Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live broadcast. Maybe I should start coming up with a name for these. I'm not sure yet. This is only my second one of this series, kind of this year. That'll be something. That'll be something we can vote on. Maybe put your favorite name for this series in the comments. But no, I'm Sam, and I'm doing some discussions primarily for writers and readers, which I also am, about topics that are of interest to me, and probably I'm not the only one. So, hoping you'll join me as I try to work on my own writing, but also engage with others in that field. And here, if you don't know, is my lovely wife, Rachel,
Hi.
who is also a reader and creative writer and fellow cool person. So, yeah, um, we're here today to answer your questions, or maybe not answer your questions, um, talk about things that are of interest to us. Today's topic that I thought would be interesting is print books versus audio. Because one, I've experimented with audio myself in the past year. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And two, I know it's just a growing trend these days. It's getting more popular. This is our cat. If you can't see very well, yeah, Finger Bomb. Say hi, Finger Bomb. And off screen is the little guy. We'll see if he makes an appearance later or not. But let's see. So I wanted to offer different perspectives today on the topic of print versus audio. So I am a self-proclaimed not audio person or written word loyalist, maybe. And Rachel is more of an audio person, at least. You do audiobooks sometimes, and also podcasts, which is a different form of, I guess, audio art or audio media.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about my experience briefly. I'll ask you some questions too, and then we'll maybe hear from some of the audience. But I want to ask you in the audience, I guess, what do you prefer, either as a reader or a writer? Do you have a strong preference of reading or writing versus one or the other? And also, kind of, my follow up question is do we think is it worth it for, I guess, someone who's not an audio person like me to try audio either in reading or in writing? So those are kind of the questions I'm posing to everyone. If you have feedback or an opinion, feel free to post in the comments.
We got
Yeah.
a hashtag
Yeah.
team audio. Nice.
Yeah.
There we go.
Corbin's there. I was actually going to shout out to Corbin in a minute because he gave us an Audible subscription for Christmas. So that's relevant to the topic. So yeah, I'm not against audiobooks. I've tried them, a few times in the past. I guess you could say I'm old fashioned or traditional in the things I like, but I'm also, how would you say it? I'm also, I guess, primarily a visual learner, or a read-write learner. They say is the fourth kind. I don't know.
Yeah.
I learn best by reading and writing, by seeing the word on the page. I mean, it's not that I never do audio. I go to church every week and listen to a sermon. I usually like take notes for that. That helps me focus too. And I go to a writers group where people read their stories out loud. So I've done it before. I have to focus more to really get it, and I have to, and it's not how I primarily intake things. And I think it's funny. I am so not audio or so not auditory that I am actually reading a print version of an audiobook right now. Ironically enough, this is a book I got for Christmas. It's one of the Star Wars ones. I read a lot of these. It's Dooku Jedi Lost by Kevin Scott, and I knew it was originally an audiobook. I guess when I got the print book, I thought it would be like a novelization or like a prose adaptation. It's actually not really. It's just the script. It's just the audiobook script here, which is fine. I mean, I'm enjoying reading it. But when I saw that, I thought, oh, hey, it would be fun if I could get the audiobook too and listen along to it at the same time as I'm reading it and see if that works for me. And Corbin got us the Audible subscription for Christmas because he's a good friend. So I tried to do that, but it was still like, even with the subscription, it was like $17 for the audiobook, and I was like, I don't know if I'll do that when I already have the physical book for however much my parents paid for this at Christmas. So I haven't really branched out that way yet, but I'm open to it in theory. It's just I find it funny that I'm now reading a print version of an audiobook, but I'm sure it's great in audio too. There's I know there's artistry that goes into that.
Because don't they have like voice actors like for each of the different characters?
Yeah. I mean,
so it becomes more of like a dramatization.
They often do. I mean, I assume this one does too. A lot of them do that.
Or they have like one reader who then does a
different voices.
dramatization of the reading. I know that Jim Dale's version of the Harry Potter books are just like on point.
Someone mentioned that. Well, I'll get those in a little bit. Yeah.
He came up with a different adaptation of his voice for each of the characters
really cool.
as they're introduced, and he keeps it like it's, like I said, it's on point. Like it's amazing because the Harry Potter books have a wide cast, and so to have the to have a different voice that's unique for each of the characters is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so someone mentioned that. I'll get to that in a little bit.
Sorry,
no, that's okay. Our friend Shaq, who's a fellow creator writer, couldn't be in this live discussion, but she sent me an email and said like feel free to use some of these thoughts, and she mentioned those specifically. Yeah. And she was once, I guess, in my camp, a non-audio person, but she's converted. She said was the gist of her email that if I don't do it anymore. Oh. But I've actually, so it's ironic a little bit that I guess that I, a non-auditory person, have begun experimenting with audio in the past year a little bit. If you didn't know already, I'm working on a novel called Fractured Heroes. Actually, I'm working on book 2 and almost done with it. It's a superhero story. I'm still editing book 1, drafting book 2. But I started releasing some portions on audio on Bandcamp. You can go to fracturedheroes.bandcamp.com and stream or download for free or name your price. And the reason I started doing that, well, it's a little ironic because we had a friend in our writers group who moved away, and then he started like posting his chapters audio recorded so we could still hear them, and that was cool of his story. So I tried to do the same thing with my story because we moved away at the beginning of 2020, and I thought this would be a great way for people who aren't with us in person anymore to hear our story, to still hear my story. And then, oh sorry, the little guy's getting fussy if you can hear him in the background. Yeah. We'll attend to that in a minute. And then right after I started doing that, COVID hit, and the writers group started meeting online anyway, which is great for us. But it's like, I didn't need to do these to keep in touch with people anymore, but I still did them anyway just to kind of put my content out there. And it's a little ironic when I'm doing it because if you haven't figured it out by this point in the broadcast, I am more eloquent in writing than I am in speech. So I'm not necessarily the best, voice actor or anything like that. So, and I mean, I'm sure you can get it done professionally, and I'm not there yet. It's just been me reading my chapters and my finished chapters, to a recording. But I've experimented with that, and a few people I think have listened and appreciated it. So maybe it's worth pursuing. I guess that's one thing I'm wondering is it still worth pursuing? Are people interested in it, even for someone who is, I guess, an audio novice? So let's see. Do we need to attend to him, do you think? Or okay, he's good.
He's not screaming.
Yeah. And
the child is not screaming, he's okay.
And as far as we know, the child also prefers audio because that's really the only form he can take in stories right now. He can't quite read them for himself yet. And in fact, I'm doing a series, mostly for fun. I mean, I'm not planning to publish this or anything, but just on my YouTube channel of nerdy bedtime stories. Yeah. I tell them the plot of a Marvel or Star Wars movie as a bedtime story, and that's been fun. So that's also spoken word or auditory form. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so Rachel, I wanted to, so for me being an audio person and you being more so of an audio person, I wanted to ask you, do you like audio more than print, or about the same, and or which one do you like more, and or which one do you do more of these days in your busy life?
Ooh. I could definitely say that I listen to more things right now than I'm reading, just because I have a busy life. I have a newborn, spoilers, and I find it helpful to have things in audio form because my hands are always busy. Mm-hmm. But so really to actually answer that question, I have to share the fact that I was dyslexic and I have like a phonetic disability. So learning to read was really challenging for me. And so, but I love stories. I loved the creativity and the world building. And so, probably way longer than what most kids do, I was listening to stories. Mm-hmm. My parents were reading books to me and that sort of thing. And so, for me, there's a component of books being both. Like I really enjoy the aspect of both. So do I prefer one over the other? The answer is probably no. If I'm going to be studying a work, the print media is better. If I'm just doing it necessarily for enjoyment, I really don't care.
Okay.
Although right now, probably auditory.
Yeah. And
receiving it auditorily is easier.
Yeah. And certain things like plays or poetry are really meant to be read aloud.
Right.
Yeah. I mean novels maybe could go either way maybe, but yeah. That's okay. If you see me randomly looking off to the side and making a funny face, it's because our son is over there and I'm easily distracted. But he's adorable. Trust me on this. So you probably answered part of this already, but I was going to ask, what do you like about audio? Is it just like easier for you these days, or is this how you learn better, or is there something specific about the genre and the form of media that makes it interesting? We've touched on some of this, but you can continue some of it.
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about it earlier when we talked about how like some audios are being more dramatized, and so I find that exciting and interesting. Hearing the different voices.
It's becoming its own art form.
Right.
It's becoming its own.
Which is interesting because that's before we had print media. Stories were told auditorily.
So
you've got
you couldn't record them or anything.
Right. So you've got the Iliad and the Odyssey. They were originally meant to be spoken aloud in a recitation that would have been probably in some sense dramatized. Same things like Beowulf. And, so you've got these ancient stories that are traditionally meant to be spoken and received as a performance, basically. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that with the auditory medium has really expanded. You've got great authors who spend a lot of time creating these beautiful worlds and then would read them very well. Neil Gaiman is a great narrator of his works. Or you've got actors who do a great job reading and dramatizing stories like Jim Dale did. So I love that aspect of it, that sort of performance art piece to the storytelling, as opposed to just someone reading it. So there's that aspect. The other thing that I find enjoyable with the auditory books on audio and that sort of thing is, again, going back to my learning disability, there are some stories that I really struggle with reading, just in general. Like, I just have a hard time reading it. An example would be, I was reading Huck Finn.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I can't read this. I couldn't read it because...
Heavy dialect. Mark Twain writes things the way they sound in those southern dialects.
Right.
Or I think at one point he said there's like 4 different dialects in the book. And
right. Yeah. Which is genius. Like don't get me wrong.
Mark
Twain is a genius.
That hadn't really been done before, I guess.
For me, it made it impossible for me to read it. So I found an audio version of the book that I then read along with, because I was taking it for a class, and so I actually had to like pay attention and like actually know what was going on. And so that's one of the things that I do now as a teacher. I encourage my students who are struggling, particularly in literature, find an audio version of it. Follow along with the audio version as you're reading, take notes, and engage in the text that way. And I think that that's really beneficial for the students who have, dyslexia or other learning disabilities, or maybe more auditory in their learning style, to have a second medium to engage the text with when they don't necessarily have someone, like a parent or a sibling can't sit down next to them and read the story to them, or they, like me, find it more challenging to read out loud than they even do reading internally. Books on audio is I think a huge benefit.
It can be, definitely,
as in education.
I taught Romeo and Juliet, and in addition to the class that, or in addition to the fact that high school boys are not always interested in that kind of thing, I also had a class of all boys, some of them, and and hard to get anyone to read Juliet seriously without making fun of it. So we did audio for portions of it.
Oh yeah, well, that'd be
at
good.
least, or even we didn't we did read aloud in class because it's similar, but yeah, that helped. You mentioned somewhere there, and I know I didn't jump in. Epic poems and stuff like that. Corbin mentioned here in the comments the epic poems, specifically some of Tolkien's, which I have not tried in audio, but maybe I should. I mean, again, poetry itself is meant to be read aloud. I had a teacher who said, I guess if you read poetry like silently to yourself, that's like reading sheet music silently and saying like, "This is my jam." That's not how it's meant to be appreciated. Not quite. Yeah, that's interesting. So I know the answer to this already, but what's the last audiobook you read or listened to?
So yeah, I listened to The Sandman,
Yep.
which was specifically designed
Thanks, Corbin.
for audio.
Was that Neil Gaiman narrating? Because you mentioned he does some of his narrating.
Yeah, so Neil Gaiman was the main narrator for it, and then they got a bunch of different actors to portray the various characters in The Sandman, which is really interesting because The Sandman was originally a graphic novel.
Yeah,
so taking
I wasn't sure
a graphic novel into an audio format, I was like, this is really cool. They didn't.
I should get that one a try.
They didn't cover everything that was in the graphic novel. All of the little vignettes and story arcs that were in the whole Sandman series, but I think they did justice to the graphic novel.
I should try that one. I remember enjoying Sandman back in the day.
And so, and I think it also helped. Again, Neil Gaiman, he has this fantastic narration voice, and he's able to paint pictures with his words. So that you can see the settings, and I think that's actually one of the things that really helped with the graphic novels is he had this beautiful word image that he then shared with the artist, who then displayed it in the graphic novel. And
sometimes he would do narration in the graphic novel, I think. The
graphic novel does have like some paragraphs and things like that.
Used to be a trend in graphic novels. I guess fewer words are trendy these days, but sometimes that still happens.
So yeah, it was really fascinating. But as a side note, I always feel like this needs to be a caveat for The Sandman or for Neil Gaiman. As a Christian, I recognize that Neil Gaiman is writing from a purely secular standpoint, and so keep that in mind.
Take it with a grain of salt, or a few grains of salt, maybe.
And so he does deal with what we as Christians would consider, immoral content and that sort of thing.
And also with paganism and things.
And
like
that. And so
you could do a whole chat on Neil Gaiman.
Probably.
we should do that in the future, maybe. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong. I think he does a great job of writing from our current culture's worldview. Not necessarily the Christian world, obviously not the Christian worldview, but like the cultural worldview that is prevalent right now, and he's influencing our cultural worldview, and so I think it's really important that we as Christians engage in that and participate in that dialogue. So anyway, that's sorry, a little random.
It's okay. We could do a whole thing about why Christians should appreciate literature and, or secular art literature. I mean, we were both English majors. We were both English grad students, and so that we both have more to say about that. Not today.
Corbin, I didn't realize that he grew up in Scientology. That also explains so much.
That would do it. Yeah. Okay.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Another. Topic.
You've touched on Harry Potter already, but I was going to ask, what's the best audiobook you've heard or listened to?
Ooh.
Or a favorite, if there's one you haven't mentioned already.
So I have a couple of go-tos. The audio version of Ender's Game is really, really good. And the Redwall series is really fantastic.
Sorry, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, we actually talked about it yesterday.
With Sarah.
And because again, there's that audio performance component to it where the characters have all of the different characters have a different dialect, and he speaks their dialect and gives them their own unique voices, and so it's just, I would call it an auditory feast. Like it's just delightful to listen to. So I would say Ender's Game. I've now listened to it, I think 2 or 3 times on audio because I loved it so much. and the Redwall series. And of course, obviously Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Jim Dale's narration of it is again spot on.
Okay. Good recommendations.
Those would be my favorites.
Okay. You heard it here first. Yeah. Good ones to check out. Okay. A few. I guess this may be a two-pronged question. What advice do you have for someone like me who's not really an audio person? Actually, I was gonna. I meant to make this point earlier, but I forgot to, so I'll just throw it in here. I feel like I could be an audio person, like if I really focus on it. Again, I do sermons and stuff, and I take notes. But part of the appeal of audiobooks is that you can listen to them while doing other things, like
right.
while driving or doing household chores, whatever. And if I do that, I feel like I'm kind of hearing it, but not really retaining it. Like it's kind of background for me. So, what advice do you have for someone who's not quite into this world yet, but is open to it, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a great question because one of the things again as a teacher you recognize that different students have different ways of gathering information. I will confess there have been a couple of times I got so engrossed into an audiobook while I was driving that I may or may not have gotten lost.
So proceed with caution.
So
also happened when we played like a game in the car, like a
if I get really into
verbal
something,
game, yeah.
I can get distracted with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I get that idea where sometimes you have to like if you're doing something in addition to listening to an audio, I don't always retain what I'm listening to as much as if I was actively paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I catch myself, I'll just have like a podcast going on in the background, and then I'll realize I've listened to probably about 2 or 3 podcasts in a row, and I have no idea what was actually going on.
That happens to me too.
If you quizzed me, I would be like, I think, I was listening to stuff you missed in history class. I don't know what they were talking about.
I'm glad it's not just me. It's not just a problem of me not retaining things.
Yeah. So how do you become more of an auditory person? I think it was with any kind of skill. It's something that you have to practice and you have to be intentional. So if you, as you were saying, you actually have to focus and concentrate, particularly during things like Inklings, our writers group, where it's all auditory and you're listening to someone sharing their piece. You have to pay attention, and what I would tell my students who are struggle with that auditory component, having them taking notes or even fidgeting can help them stay more focused. Mm-hmm. So again, actually maybe working on a project that doesn't necessarily require that much brain activity.
I've tried to do like podcasts and stuff while doing menial things like cleaning the bathroom or
right.
or playing a not very mentally involved game on the computer. Yeah. Sometimes I can do that, and I mean I probably don't catch every single thing, but I get the gist.
Yeah. So I practice, I guess, and
sure.
Again, being intentional would be ways in which you would develop that skill set.
Okay.
Would be my answer to that question.
I didn't write this one down, but kind of made me think of it as we're talking. Some of the ones you mentioned, like Ender's Game and Redwall, and of course Harry Potter, I think, and Sandman, I think they were adaptations of things you've already read.
I actually never read Ender's Game.
Okay.
I actually listened to it first.
Never mind. I was wrong with that. So,
Redwall, I'm trying to remember if I read first or listened to it first, and I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you.
So I was going to ask if you're more familiar with it and or more able to retain if it's a story you're familiar with already. Like I mean, sometimes I'll put a movie on in the background, but it's a movie I've seen before. If it's a movie that's new to me and I actually want to watch it, then I want to focus. If it's one I've seen like 3 times before and I just want something fun, I'll put it all in other things.
That's a good question. I mean, Harry Potter I've listened to. I've also read them multiple times. And I find both mediums enjoyable. But things like Ender's Game, I definitely listened to it first.
Okay.
And
you set out the whole story and everything.
Yeah. I also discovered that I listened to actually a lot of Agatha Christie novels.
Okay.
Before I actually ever sat down and actually read them. I'm trying to think of some other novels that I've or stories that I've only listened to. this is totally not up your alley, but Georgette Hare, she's a Regency novelist.
Okay.
I don't think I've actually read a novel of hers. I take it back. I started listening to an audio version of it in the car while I was traveling with my sister, and our trip was over, and we hadn't finished the story. So I got the book so I could finish the story.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've actually read any of her novels. I've only ever listened
Other
to them.
than that one.
And I enjoyed them immensely
Okay.
in that audio format, and I enjoyed reading it too. But so for me, it doesn't. I don't think. Again, I think that's where I'm interchangeable.
Sure.
I think for some people, having read the story and then listening to it, they might be able to retain it and actually enjoy the process a little bit better. Maybe that's something for you.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. Again, I was thinking of doing them simultaneously with this book, and I mean, maybe if I can find free ones that don't have to pay extra for, I would do that. I would try it.
A little miser there. A little
Yeah,
cheap.
well, it's not like we have a baby or anything. It's eating up our expenses.
Yeah. Kids are expensive, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, so let that be a lesson to all of you. No, they're also great and wonderful, but expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and last one for now, I guess. We didn't talk much about audio as a writer, but we're both creative writers, and I experimented with that. Do you think it's worth pursuing either for someone who's not an audio person or for someone who wants his main book to be in print? Like, is it worth dabbling in audio just to kind of get your foot in the water, or?
I think that's a great question, and I think that audio is kind of like how podcasts and like have become a thing.
Yeah.
And, you know,
it's a lot easier to get about content over online.
Yeah. So
Sorry,
one of the things that
something.
speaking of audio and like sharing your stories in an audio format as well as having it in print. Another great author that I know, Andrew Peterson. In this last year, particularly because of the pandemic, started doing nightly readings of his books. Which I thought was really, really cool. So he comes on and does a live reading of his stories.
His have already been published.
Right, they've already been published.
And I'm kind of trying to build, I guess, an audience before I get published.
Yeah. So it's a slightly different format. But, you know, I saw that as like a really great way to engage the audience in a very, like, real way. Now, I think Andrew Peterson, like Neil Gaiman, has an excellent narration voice. There are some authors who are really great writers who are not good narrators, and I think that's something that's to keep in mind as you are thinking about an audio format. Think about, do you have the narration voice and can narrate a story well? Because that's one of those things that takes practice, and I think it's something that develops over time.
Sure.
So anyway, I guess I don't know if that really answered that question or not, but
that's good perspective. Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since my high school theater days, so.
But I am seeing a lot more authors encouraging the audio format of their works, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely a market for it, a really good, strong market.
The medium is transforming, and like anything, I mean, every new technology or new wave or fad, I mean, there are people who love the old thing who resist it, and yet the fads keep coming. So,
yeah,
I shouldn't say fad because that implies it goes away, but the trends and social movements keep coming.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that print is ever going to go out of style.
Right.
I just think that audio format is a thing that should be embraced. Another actually, speaking of podcasts, one of my favorite podcasts is called Classic Tales, and I totally forgot his name.
I can Google it. I don't know.
But the guy who does the Classic Tales podcast, he's reading classical tales, books that are out of print, and he's reading them and making them accessible, so you can basically have audiobooks
cool.
of the Classic Tales. and again, he does voices and has a good, nice narration voice. So again, I think there's an audience for the
Sure.
audiobooks. Again, when you think about the students that do struggle with reading, that reading is not their strong suit, having that in an audio format can be really beneficial to their education.
Okay, yeah. I can't find it either, but or I'm not certain. But
Yeah.
is it that guy?
No.
Okay.
It's,
So it's the Classic Tales podcast. So I just wanted to give a shout out to things that are referenced here.
yeah.
But okay, yeah.
Sorry, I'm really bad with names right now. Mom brain is a thing.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing, guys.
It's science. Well, thank you for your input.
Yeah.
This went on longer than I originally planned, but that's okay. We were having a good discussion. So thank you for
Thanks for having me.
showing the fans and talking about your experience. If you're interested in either these kinds of discussions in general or Fractured Heroes, my story that I'm working on, you can download the audio chapters at fracturedheroes.bandcamp.com. Also, go in the link of this event or the link of my author, the top link on my author page, Samuel N. Harris. You'll find my current site and can sign up for more updates and things like that. So thank you for listening. Keep reading and writing and whatever it is you do, whatever format it is in that you do it in, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.